Every once in a while, an anime series would air that challenges me in terms of my worth as a human being and what it means to survive in such a cruel, unforgiving, and ruthless world, while also making me fully aware of the delicate balance between humankind, machine, and the overall human psyche, especially when it reaches at its most desperate, its darkest, and its most harrowing. Techhnolyze was that one anime series that managed to take me by the scruff of my neck and really take me into places that I never really thought of. Even the most disturbing of places, the most ruthless and the most unforgiving of places, but has therefore challenged me in more ways than one, and something that I consider to be very distinctive in terms of its quality, messages, and how much it was able to rise above as one of my favorite anime series of all time. This anime series, which is rich in a lot of surrealism, dark psychological thriller, and science fiction, managed to accomplish what no other anime series has ever done before. Use subtlety, atmosphere, imagery, and stillness when it needs to build up on the overall environment that Techhnolyze inhabits, especially when it is predominantly located in the city of Lux, an unforgiving locale filled to the brim with darkness, despair, and a whole lot of chaos. And contributing to this is the existence of machine-like limbs being used called Techhnolyze. When one person loses an arm or two arms or a leg or two legs, then they receive these mechanical limbs known as Techhnolyze, and therefore manage to find themselves becoming more powerful with these said mechanical limbs. But the question is, at what cost? Is it for their own humanity and for the long run, their own souls? Or are they just going to give in to this newfound technology that therefore replaces the things that they might value in their daily analogous lives? Techhnolyze managed to really take me seriously as a viewer because I was able to understand how much the desperation and destruction is omnipresent in this dark city. Barely anybody survives. And if someone were to try to have themselves being challenged, let alone be in the city's clutches, they would never get out. What's also interesting is that it not only deals with the human psyche, let alone the flesh, as it were, but also the human spirit and the lengths that one would go in order to survive such a dark and unforgiving locale. And Texhnolyze really did that for me, starting when I watched it as a 12-year-old sixth grader back in 2004 on Animax. Back then, I knew that I was in for something amazing, and Texhnolyze certainly delivered on that. But I was not fully ready to thoroughly appreciate just how strong this anime was in its atmosphere and its dark imagery to provoke a sense of hopelessness and despair. And even though there is that one slight and slim sliver of hope, it still manages to tell its story with subtlety, respect, and a dark beauty that made me thoroughly entranced by the world of looks and everything that Texhnolyze is defined by. This series is, interestingly enough, created by the same gentleman who conceptualized Haibanerenme and Serial Experiments Lane, Yoshitoshi Abe, and his mastery of subtlety and detail shows so magnificently in Texhnolyze to the point where I was thoroughly transfixed. I was transfixed by the world of Luke's when I was a 12-year-old boy, and I'm still transfixed to this very day as an adult. The basic premise of Texhnolyze covers a young underground fighter by the name of Ichise. His participation in a lot of Valetudo, MMA, and basic cage fighting matches has made him a lot more renowned in those circles, but at a price. Rival gangs want to see him dead, let alone thoroughly destroyed. One night, when he is about to have his way with a mistress, he automatically realizes something fishy about her as she almost tries to do away with him. But he's not having any of that. Unfortunately, he ends up being caught by the rival gang and ends up losing one arm and one leg. But hope is not lost for him, as a woman by the name of Doc finds him and not only thinks that there's something striking about him, but she might want to experiment on him by adding in a mechanically prosthetic limb, let alone arm and leg, to see if he can survive with that new set of limbs. And he basically embarks on a journey that revolves around not only the lengths that the human flesh can go in terms of adapting itself to machine-based limbs, but also how it affects his overall spirit and how that is going to play a major role for people inhabiting looks. Texhnolyze's story certainly holds no punches when it comes to its dark atmosphere and its great use of subtle imagery. And speaking of subtle imagery, there's also the existence of Ron and her fellow citizens who wear these masks to also foresee what is going to happen in looks. And trust me, what they predict is anything but jolly or fortunate. There are a lot more dark predictions that foretell chaos and destruction and despair. And it also shows you right there that there are some people, it looks, who are far from heroic and would do anything they can to do each other away, especially when it comes to fear just looming all over them, as well as the terror that they think that they've seen, mostly because of the battle that they've endured between those who rely on machines to make themselves stronger. Texhnolyze definitely does present the whole intersection between man versus machine, let alone humankind versus machine, but also the spirit, let alone the human spirit versus machine, and does it in a way that makes me thoroughly entranced with everything that Texhnolyze was defined by, and therefore just managed to make me as the viewer thoroughly engaged with the characters, the world building, and the story that has made Texhnolyze the great absolute legend that it is in the surreal sci-fi anime genre, but also one of the greatest anime series I've seen of all time. It really says a lot when great work and detail were put in the art, the music, and the atmosphere building that cultivate such a mysterious, desperate, and overall dank and dark world that looks is defined by the muted color palettes and the use of dark colors, and sometimes even the garish colors that don't feel distracting, make Texhnolyze's visual style all the more worth rooting for, and therefore make an experience that you cannot, well, skip out on. And it's something that you might think about returning to, or even contemplate wanting slightly more of it. But at the same time, it makes you want to question yourself a lot more and question your own worth as a human being, let alone question that blurred line between humankind and machine. It's also pretty much relevant as of today, given the presence of artificial intelligence, let alone AI, and the existence of modern technology in the field of medicine becoming a lot more apparent, thus making Texhnolyze a very relevant anime that also demonstrates that art truly does reflect what is going on in this modern world. The characters are definitely intriguing to the point where you want to write a book about each and every one of them. Ichise is essentially a stoic underdog, and even though he is shrouded in mystery and tragedy, he is still someone who fascinates me so much, to the point where I can't help but cry for him when he gets amputated, and sometimes feel bad for him when things don't go his way. But at the same time, there was that chunk of me that kept on rooting for him because of that inner strength that he has, that stoicism that he possesses, as an underground fighter and someone who has experienced the ugliest and most depraved sides of humankind. And that is what Ichise is defined by. And I definitely enjoy his presence. Equally as fascinating is Ron, the teenage seer who foretells dark future predictions happening. This mysterious young girl is someone that I found really fascinating and really intriguing because of just how much she was able to serve as a catalyst for everything that transpires in the city of Lux. Furthermore, I've always cherished the bond between Ichise and Ron. Sure, it is a very respectful bond that both of them have together, and it is something that fascinates me in terms of what they share and the genuineness that they could have together if fate were kinder to them. And as it is, their relationship is filled to the brim with subtlety, understanding, and a whole lot of genuineness that I found myself thoroughly transfixed with everything Ichise and Ron are defined by. Doc is essentially the sort of big sister figure to Ichise, considering that she has repaired his limbs after what happened to him being sort of deprived of them, let's put it nicely. She has a rather distant and somewhat calculating view of humankind, but at least with Ichise, he does seem rather indebted to her, considering that she was the one who not only saved him, but also provided him with a new leash on life, with a new arm and a new leg. Sure, she might think of herself as someone who is pretty much someone who tries to acquire opportunities to experiment on people who want to experience that feeling of being technolyzed. But there's also something about her that is very foreboding, but also wise in a dark way, which makes Doc all the more fascinating. Then there's also Onishi, who serves as a sort of Yakuza boss, full of stoicism, and also makes Ichise his right-hand man if ever some things were to happen to him. And the outsider of Lux, whose name is Yoshi, who finds himself thoroughly transfixed and engaged with Lux's mystery and tries to get behind everything that's going on there. So the characters were definitely fascinating in terms of subtlety, layers, and in terms of what I could acquire from them as a viewer, complete with a whole lot of tactfulness and a whole lot of understanding where each of them are coming from. There's desperation. There are motivations that each of them has to survive or to exploit, and each of them managed to win me over so darn much. It also says something when the voice acting from both tracks are just as brilliant. Sure, I do love the likes of Satoshi Haga as Ichise, and she's got Ito as Ron, let alone Hiroshi Tsuchida as Onishi. But the English dub is just as amazing. Justin Gross was also just as amazing as Ichise, considering that he measures Satoshi Haga's brand of stoicism and virility, as well as provide him with that gruffness that makes him all the more charismatic in a virile way. Carrie Savage was purely brilliant as Ron, and she is also just on par with Shizuka Ito in the role, because both Shizuka Ito and Carrie Savage embody a lot of young girls and a lot of youthful heroines. And in terms of Carrie Savage as Ron, it's a great game changer for her, considering her usual penchant of voicing a lot of spunky, cheery ingenues. So to hear her have a go at someone who is more subdued and subtle is absolutely amazing. Victoria Harwood definitely stole the show as Doc. Her Shakespearean subtlety and that elegance, that dark elegance which she provides for Doc, and her worldly wisdom, and some of the opportunistic sides to her make her characterization of Doc thoroughly amazing. I dare not forget about Patrick Zeitz as Onishi, who oozes with virility and commanding strength, as well as Sam Riegel as Yoshii, who is down to earth and thoroughly brilliant. I also must give props to the music. I especially love Texhnolyze's opening because it capitalizes on that haunting, foreboding atmosphere. And Gakt, when he sang Tsuki no Uta, I thought he was absolutely brilliant and appealing in a very alluring manner. I definitely loved listening to the first ending song, and the second ending song was just as brilliant, if not tragic. So everything about Texhnolyze was thrilling in terms of what it was able to do with its story, its characters, atmosphere, and music. Both stylistically and substantially, Texhnolyze wins in my eyes, and I've always respected the legacy that it has prevailed and what it was able to accomplish as an anime series. It's also a clear example that anime can be taken seriously. It never panders to the lowest common denominator. It respects viewers' and listeners' intelligence and treats dark subject matters like the feeling of hopelessness, the really fine line between the battle between humankind and machine, and the sheer despair that one acquires when being in the city of Lux. Texhnolyze managed to handle its subject matter completely amazingly with a lot of tact, brilliance, and strength. Everything about Texhnolyze, remains brilliant, strong, and beautiful in its unique way. And I, for one, would love to keep coming back to it. Sure, some viewers might only want to experience Texhnolyze once or maybe twice, but every time I want something that helps me to think a lot more and therefore reflect on everything that is going on in this world. Texhnolyze is that one anime series that I would consult, all guns blazing and with a whole lot of open-mindedness, because Texhnolyze truly does shine in its brilliantly amazing quality, its stellar artwork, and its characters that were layered, rich in subtlety, and totally rich in sheer brilliance. And I'm sure that there's a great deal of you who have experienced Texhnolyze for yourselves. And if so, please let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on how Texhnolyze uses its storytelling to depict such an unforgiving and uncompromising world such as looks? What was one character or set of characters that you thoroughly cared for? Did you also enjoy everything that has made Texhnolyze the brilliant anime that it is, even though you feel kind of drained watching it, let alone experiencing it? Or did you also feel that there could have been a lot more from Texhnolyze? Please let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear what you have to think about Texhnolyze and everything that is defined by, and I'm sure that we can have a nice conversation on there. Texhnolyze is certainly that once-in-a-lifetime experience that I order you to have a go at. Sure, you may not like the daunting darkness that this anime is defined by, but you will definitely be proud of yourself when you immerse yourself into Texhnolyze's unforgiving atmosphere, but also its sheer mastery of subtlety, great craftsmanship, and sheer brilliance that a mind such as Yoshitoshi Abe could ever muster. Therefore, Texhnolyze is highly recommended viewing if you want to have a frank, let alone really challenging perspective of what it is like to see that fine line drawn between humankind and machine. You will definitely have your perspectives challenged, but you'll also thank yourself after watching all 22 episodes of this anime masterpiece. Yes, folks, it is no wonder my Texhnolyze was placed number 2 in my top 15 favorite anime of all time back 11 years ago, because of its mastery, its amazing writing, and characters that I found myself being thoroughly invested with. Therefore, you owe it to yourselves to experience Texhnolyze. Take care, and remember, don't let the darkness consume you, everybody.